banned in a lot of places. We like tinkering with the toys. First, speed metal. It's half good, half bad. Someone thought this was a good idea. Queen formed in 1970. They combined rock, amazing production, sort of heavy metal, opera. Well, Queen is kind of hard to pigeonhole in an awful lot of ways because up to that point, no one ever really sounded like Queen. Bohemian Rhapsody, We Will Rock You, Another One Bites the Dust. Some of the most recognizable songs in rock history. The performance of Live Aid. This band's legacy endures. Go and check the amount of streams some of their songs have on Spotify. You will be surprised. And as a cohesive unit, the band's first album, simply titled Queen, was released in 1973. Keep Yourself Alive is a great single. Liar's a great single. Mad the Swine is included in the 2024 deluxe reissue of this album. It was dropped from the original sequence that eventually became a B-side on the headline single in 1991. Like an awful lot of debut albums from bands that have since basically secured their legacy, when I think of this album, I think of it as a promising debut. I hear moments of Led Zeppelin. I hear Beatles-esque harmonies. I hear maybe a little Jethro Tull progginess. This was recorded at Trident Studios, where Bowie recorded Ziggy Stardust. If your favorite Queen songs are the heavier Queen songs, you probably think, you might think this is really one of their best albums. And it's certainly not a bad album. I do believe it was a very promising debut, and I would say it is a good album. Queen 2 arrived less than a year after the release of Queen 1. A lot of fantasy elements are very present on the tracks on this album. There are more overdubs. There are more harmonies. The production of this album is a little bit more complicated. This is where the band decided, we like tinkering with the toys. Let's see what we can create. The album cover is iconic. Seas of Rhye was a big hit in the UK. Didn't really make much of an impact in the United States. White Queen is a cool listen. I'm not really sure about the loser in the end, the Roger Taylor track on this album. The March of the Black Queen is the band's second longest song. Feels like a precursor to Bohemian Rhapsody, in my opinion. Queen 2 is also a good album. I wouldn't say it was great, or I wouldn't say that it's classic, but it's good. But again, like if you're into that the heavier Queen sound is your bag, you might be inclined to rank it higher than I would. In November of 1974, Sheer Heart Attack was released. This album made that initial list of the 1001 albums you must hear before you die. It's on NME's Greatest 100 Albums of All Time list. Side note, Brian May had a hepatitis scare during the make of this album. Killer Queen was a big hit. They got to perform that on Top of the Pops. It was a big hit in the United States, too. Now I'm Here. If it hadn't dawned on you yet, when you heard Now I'm Here, you realize a lot of Queen songs have a certain empowering element to them. And Now I'm Here is certainly one of them. Brighton Rock's a great opener. Stone Cold Crazy just comes out of nowhere in this album, in my opinion. Some people might say it's the first speed metal track. Metallica covered it in the early 90s. Bring Back That Leroy Brown. That interesting song. I do believe that Sheer Heart Attack was the band moving more in the classic direction that we know that the band has that eventually would attain. And probably the first time they attained that was 1975's A Night at the Opera. Up to that point, it was the most expensive album ever recorded. It was their first but not last album to take its name from a Marx Brothers movie. Disappointingly, they never released an album called Duck Soup. Bohemian Rhapsody is the immortal song from this album. You're My Best Friend was the follow-up single. 39. They were going for like a old sea shanty vibe on that song. Love of My Life is on this album. That's a song that never got a lot of airplay, or certainly doesn't at this point, like on American classic rock radio. But this song was a huge hit in Argentina and Brazil. It's one of those songs that is a big favorite with Queen diehard fans. You know it. It's one of your favorite deep cuts. The call and response, the sing-along at the concerts. It might be Freddie Mercury's best ballad. Seaside Rendezvous kind of revisits that music hall sound that they like to lean into. Theatrical, but Queen. There's just nothing wrong with that album. It is a classic Queen album. We'll get to classic Queen later. In 1976, A Day at the Races, their second album to take a title from a Marx Brothers movie. This was sort of regarded as a sequel to A Night at the Opera. I think it lives up to that assertion pretty well. It was their first entirely self-produced album. It was a #1 album in the UK. It was a top 5 album in the United States. Tie Your Mother Down, Somebody to Love, the obviously gospel-inspired track. They loved Aretha Franklin. Good old-fashioned Lover Boys on this. You Take My Breath Away really almost comes across as like a Freddie Mercury solo record, really. Teo Toriate has 2 choruses sung in Japanese. White Man is one of the band's darkest tracks. It is a strong follow-up, and in my opinion, one of the few instances in which a band follows up a triumph with yet another Triumph album. This is the album that had to follow A Night at the Opera. Maybe it doesn't have a Bohemian Rhapsody on it. It's still, from start to finish, it's a classic album. Queen's first EP was released in 1977. 4 tracks. I'm not entirely sure why this exists. I don't really know a lot about the lore involved in it. I believe Tie Your Mother Down was also, at the time that they released Tie Your Mother Down as a single from A Day at the Races, they released this EP to go along with it. And at this point in time, I would say, I mean, it's not bad, but there are other ways to get the songs on this EP at this point in time. So I would say it is something for the completists. News of the World was released in 1977. It went quadruple platinum. The cover was inspired by an illustration from a 1953 astounding science fiction magazine cover. We are the champions / we will rock you. Written with the audience in mind. If you've seen the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, you definitely know that. The song Sheer Heart Attack is on this album. Queen noticed that punk was a thing around the time they recorded this album. Punk was in some ways a reaction to bands like Queen. All Dead is a song about a cat. Sad. Spanish Guitar and Who Needs You, that's pretty cool. We're still in that period of Queen's music where every surprise was usually always a pleasant surprise somehow. Not every band can do that. I would say that News of the World is almost classic, but not quite. It is a great album, though. The band followed that up in 1978 with Jazz. So the lads attended the Montreal Jazz Festival while they were working on this album. Bicycle Race was inspired by the 1978 Tour de France. It had a video, an early music video, with nude women riding bicycles, and that wound up being banned in a lot of places. Fat-Bottomed Girls, Don't Stop Me Now, was a big hit in the UK, not so much in the US, but it's been used in so many TV commercials and movies since. It has really grown in popularity over the years. Jazz is maybe a little heavier than News of the World. Mustafa, Jealousy, Fun It. That one, don't let the disco bug bite too hard, guys. If for no other reason than Bicycle Race and Fat-Bottomed Girls are on this album, I'm going to say it's great, even though it has its weak moments. Life Killers dropped in the summer of 1979. I mentioned Love of My Life earlier. You can definitely hear the crowd participation in the version that's on this album. This is a fairly long live album. It was like 90 minutes or more. I remember I had a cassette of this, and it broke. You know how cassettes would sometimes get that weird tension in them that you couldn't fix? I had a way of fixing them where you kind of whack them flat on a table surface. Somebody watching this video knows what I'm talking about. Life Killers is a pretty good live album. It's good. Queen was a pretty good live band. This one was kind of a big deal. In 1980, The Game was released. The songs were... I almost want to say this was Queen taking a sort of back to the roots of rock and roll approach. I mean, it still sounded like Queen. There's still a lot of fairly elaborate production, but the songs generally were quite a bit more simple. The band leaned more into pop, into disco, funk. This is the first time the band used synthesizers. It was their only #1 album in the United States. Crazy Little Thing Called Love preceded the release of the album by a few months. Save Me, Play the Game, and of course Another One Bites the Dust was a massive worldwide hit. It was also one of the most prominent songs at the heart of the whole backmasking thing that was going on during what some people would refer to as the satanic panic of the early 80s. People believed if you played Another One Bites the Dust backwards, you could hear Freddie saying, "Start to smoke marijuana." Need Your Lovin' Tonight's on this album. I thought Dragon Attack was an absolute banger. Sail Away, Sweet Sister's great song. Coming Soon's a fun song. Even though they, in some ways, sounded less like Queen than on any other album before, something about The Game just absolutely, entirely works. And it's a classic album. If you're only intent on having classic Queen albums in your collection, we'll get to that. I think you have to have the game. In December of 1980, the Flash Gordon soundtrack arrived. Flash was the only single. It almost was a hit. I think it peaked in the mid 40s or low 40s, somewhere like that, in the United States. You know, this is not a mandatory part of anybody's collection. It's an interesting listen, so I'll at least put it in the okay category. The first Queen Greatest Hits compilation was released in 1981. There are several different versions of this album, depending on what songs were hits and what country you lived in. So you could really go down a rabbit hole trying to collect all of these if you really want to. All of the hits from the first Queen, the biggest hits, I should say for sure, from the first Queen album to Flash. It is the best-selling album ever in the UK. If you live in the UK, you probably know that, but I think a lot of people like in the United States don't realize that Queen was and is such a massively huge band in the world at large. This album has gone on to be 9 times platinum in the United States. It's an album that a lot of people own, and it's a really good greatest hits album. I'm not really going to put, I just kind of don't believe in putting greatest hits albums in the classic category, at least not very often. I think maybe I did that with Journey's Greatest Hits, though. And I'm going to move on to an album that is definitely not classic Queen. We'll get to that. Hot Space was released in 1982. Hey guys, you know what? Another One Bites the Dust was huge. We should make more stuff like that. This album did give us Under Pressure with David Bowie, which inadvertently gave us Ice Ice Baby. Body Language is on this album. Calling All Girls. You know, I know everybody bags on this album, which in a weird sort of way makes me try to figure out a way to recommend it. But honestly, I can't. For me, this album is a complete dud. I'll just be real honest with you. When this album was released, I listened to it and I couldn't believe it. Fortunately, in 1984, the band released The Works. This definitely sounds like Queen. This is definitely a return to more of a rock sound throughout. But it's Queen for the 80s. There's some synth pop kind of vibes sprinkled into the mix. Synthesizers play a bigger role than they, did obviously during the 70s, in which they didn't play a role. Radio Gaga is one of the best known tracks from the album. I later came to really love this song as I had a career in radio for many, many years. There's a personal connection to that song for me. Hammer to Fall, It's a Hard Life. I Want to Break Free is on this album, which is a great Queen song. Now, the video of this song, some people say this video single-handedly wrecked Queen's career in the United States. All the members of the band were dressed in drag. It was basically meant to be a parody of the very popular British soap opera Coronation Street. It was a big hit in the UK, where they got the joke, but in America, they didn't get the joke. So it's kind of a problem. The song Tear It Up has older Queen vibes. The Works is a pretty good album. I will say it's a good album. I'm not going to say it's great. So here we go with our first Queen box set, The Complete Works, which was a comprehensive collection of Queen studio albums up to 1985. It also included the bonus Complete Vision disc, which was a 7-track collection, which, as they put it, tidied up the non-album A-sides and B-sides up to that time, like Thank God It's Christmas, for example. At this point in time, I think there are better ways to get everything that's on this, that's part of this collection. If you can find it at a good price, you might add it to your physical media collection. In 1986, the band returned with another studio album, A Kind of Magic. And it was basically the soundtrack of the movie Highlander. This album featured several singles: Princes of the Universe, Who Wants to Live Forever, One Year of Love, great ballad, A Kind of Magic, the title track was a really good song, One Vision, man, I loved that song, Gimme, Gimme, Gimme Fried Chicken. Pain is So Close to Pleasure. That song just reeks of mid-80s keyboards. It is a weak point on the album. The song Friends Will Be Friends. When I was listening to this album the other day and taking some notes, I don't script these videos really per se. I just kind of jot down a lot of notes. When I was listening to Friends Will Be Friends, I thought to myself, this sounds like a parody of a classic Queen song. I just don't think it's Friends Will Be Friends just seems really rote. Give Me the Prize. Nah. Don't Lose Your Head just feels like a song that's not going anywhere, but at the same time is never gonna end. A Kind of Magic is an okay Queen album. It is not, it's half good, half bad, is kind of the way I look at it. Live Magic was released in December of 1986. Most of the tracks on this album were recorded August 9th at Nebworth Park, the band's final ever concert featuring the original lineup. And this album, the songs are so edited. And this album was not very well received, in my opinion. It's one it's for completists. You can skip this one. Even though the band in the mid-'80s, they were in peak form as a live act. It's just the production and the assemblage of this album. It's just a no. And then in 1980, sorry about that. In 1989, The Miracle was released, and that album cover is generally considered one of the worst album covers of all time. And here's the funny thing about that. Someone thought this was a good idea, and someone else, or possibly several other someone else's, replied with either, "Let's do it!" or, "Yeah, let's do it." I'm not sure which one. So that's enough bagging on the album cover. The album itself, I think I Want It All is a great, great Queen song. I could hear Def Leppard recording this song, slightly different production, but it's a great Queen song. It's one of the band's best latter years tracks. And The Miracle is a good song. It's a gorgeous song. Scandal, I think, is a good song. It was a single. Breakthrough, I'm not entirely sure about. Then there's The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man, bing. I'm the Invisible Man, bing. I don't know about that one. Rain Must Fall. Scandal is a song about the British press, by the way. My Baby Does Me has a little bit of Another One Bites the Dust to it. Was It All Worth It is kind of a pretty cool throwback to what they were doing in their 70s heyday. This album, in my opinion, is a lot like A Kind of Magic. It has some really great moments, but it has quite a few misfires on it, in my opinion. In December of 1989, it was at the Beeb. Don't get this. There's a later release of this, which is a lot more inclusive and remastered. Don't get at the Beeb. Just don't get that one. The band's final album recorded with Freddie Mercury. Front to back. Freddie participated. Innuendo was released in 1991. Freddie was losing his battle with AIDS at the time. It's fairly well known that he could only work in the studio for an hour or two at a time. Still, every performance on this album, Freddie nails it. Innuendo was released as a single, I'm Going Slightly Mad. Headlong, These Are the Days of Our Lives. And the somehow appropriate final track on the album, The Show Must Go On. Great song. Ride the Wild Wind is one of the most underappreciated driving a fast car songs out there. It's a little silly in its own way, but it works. Some Queen songs are kind of silly. Don't Try So Hard is good. The Hitman is a banger. And I'm going to say that this is one of the band's classic albums. I really feel that way. There are no weak spots on this album. I would even go as far as to say it's a no-skips album. And it is a late career triumph, as a lot of legacy bands have managed to pull off along the way. Innuendo is a classic. Fight me on that if you want. If you disagree, that's what the comment section's for. The CD single box set was released in 1991. This was released in Japan only. It featured 12 3-inch singles. You remember 3-inch singles? I've got a couple somewhere. I should have dug them up for this. Each has 3 tracks, except for Queen's first EP, which was released in this 3-inch CD format, which has the original 4. It is a very hard to find collector's item at this point. But I would honestly just say it's for completists. It's not something that you have to have. Greatest Hits 2 was released in 1991, just a month before Freddie's passing. This was not released in the United States until much later on. The best stuff from Hot Space up to Innuendo. It's a pretty good greatest hits collection. I'm going to put it right there. In the United States, a few months after the release of Queen's Greatest Hits 2 in Europe, Classic Queen was what we got in America. Even though it contained a few things that were already on the first Greatest Hits album, the way they dealt with this was to reissue Greatest Hits with a different track listing, so Greatest Hits and Classic Queen could be companion pieces to one another. Classic Queen is a really good introduction to the band. It's a really good compilation. I'm gonna say it's great. It's not all inclusive, but it's a really good listen. The 12-inch collection was released in 1982 because everyone needs to hear the long version of Radio Gaga. I'm serious. At that point in the 80s, extended versions of rock songs were actually pretty common. It's an interesting listen. I wouldn't say it's essential, but it's worth having in your collection. Live in Wembley 86 was released in 1992. It was a double live album recorded during the Magic Tour. Again, this is, as a live act, you can tell that the band is still very much at the top of its game. It's a live album that's pretty good. I don't jump up and down about it. I'm just not that guy. 5 Live with George Michael and Lisa Stansfield. 5-song EP, 6-song, got some radio airplay, kept the brand alive in an awful lot of ways. And George Michael does an admirable job filling in for Freddie. George has a great voice. But I never loved this album. I listened to it once and thought, okay, that's okay. George does nice. But I never felt the need to revisit this or to really spend any meaningful time with it. Queen at the BBC. This was a reissue that sounds a lot better, has some extra tracks, was released in 1995. So, again, I would say it's something that is for completists. There's a later collection that comes up. Made in Heaven was the last Queen studio album featuring all Freddie Mercury vocals. A Winter's Tale is good. Too Much Love Will Kill You is the only vault track, so to speak, from this album. It was finished during the sessions for The Miracle, but there were some publishing rights issues. So this is a leftover track that never saw daylight until this reissue, or until this album came out. Made in Heaven is a pretty good effort to put together a final Queen album. The parts of it that work pretty well. The other parts are so-so. Made in Heaven is good. It's not great. The Queen Rocks compilation was released in 1997. It features one new song, No One But You, by the remaining members of Queen. This album, simply put, is a compilation of Queen's hard stuff. It's a crunchy Queen album. And if that's what you want, it's good. The Crown Jewels box set was released in 1998. The first 8 Queen albums remastered. At this point in time, I think that I think you have other options, and I would say this is a for completist release. Greatest Hits 3 was released in 1999. It features Elton John covering The Show Must Go On, a live cut of that. There's the Wycliffe Jean remix of Another One Bites the Dust. And it's a compilation of the latter hits that the band had. It's really at best an okay compilation. A year later, all 3 of the greatest hits compilations were issued as a deluxe box set called the Platinum Collection. This is a pretty good way to have a good collection of the best and most vital Queen stuff, for the most part. Live at Wembley Stadium is a reissue of Live at Wembley 86. It is more complete. There are extra songs, and the songs that are there are not edited. So this is the one you want to get. Queen on Fire, Live at the Bowl, recorded during the Hot Space Tour in 1982. Brian May had some issues with broken guitar strings. During Fat Bottomed Girls, Freddie Mercury changed the lyric to, You Made an ass out of me. This was also released on DVD, and I think that whole Apple thing is worth a good rating just by itself. Stone Cold Classics dropped in 2006. There was an episode of American Idol in which all the contestants had to sing Queen songs. It is completely skippable. It's just another fairly generic greatest hits collection. The A to Z of Queen Volume 1, a 2-CD set only available at Walmart and Amazon.com. The song titles are more or less in alphabetical order. It came with a DVD, and some of the live performances on the DVD featured Paul Rodgers on vocals. We had entered that era. It's okay. It's not anything. I mean, if you can get it for the DVD and for the Paul Rodgers stuff, that's kind of cool. Queen Rock Montreal, recorded during the final concert of the Game Tour. It features a cover of Jailhouse Rock. A lot of people consider this their best live album, and it is actually a really good live album. The Singles Collection Volume 1 was released in 2008. A-sides and B-sides, 13 CDs, includes Queen's first EP. This is something that at this point that is for completists. The Cosmos Rocks was an album recorded with Paul Rodgers. It's not a great album. It's not a bad album. I thought Celebrity was a good song. It was nice to hear Brian May drop some fresh licks, so it was cool for that. It's not a great album. It's certainly not an embarrassment in the band's catalog, though. I would say it is arguably a good album. The Singles Collection Volume 2, the next 13 singles released, A-sides and B-sides, on 13 CDs. Again, this is something that is for completists. The Absolute Greatest Collection. This was released in 2009. All remastered tracks with commentaries, a 52-page hardback book. This is when we're starting to get into the era of deluxe editions being a little bit more deluxe than just, oh, here, it's all in one box. Or, hey, we remastered it. it sounds a little bit different. So I'm going to say that this is at least an okay collection. The Singles Collection Volume 3. The third of 4 sets altogether, 13 CDs, A-sides and B-sides. I'm going to put this over here in the for completest category. Same thing with the Singles Collection Volume 4, which was the 4th and final set, 13 CDs, A-sides and B-sides. Deep Cuts Volume 1. Deep Cuts Volume 2. Deep Cuts Volume 3. The thing about Deep Cuts, these were songs selected by the band. Here's a collection of songs that were not our biggest hits. Good songs, one and all, good songs, just not the big hits. Hungarian Rhapsody, Queen live in Budapest, 86. It's a live album. The concert was recorded during the Cold War, originally issued on VHS and Laserdisc. It's a really good live show, but at the same time, it's nice to be able to have a physical media of that beyond the VHS or Laserdisc. Live at the Rainbow 74 was recorded during the Sheer Heart Attack tour. There are 2 different versions. One which is basically highlights of the show, and the other is a deluxe, much more complete version of the show. It's not a bad performance, but at this point in time, in my opinion, you're really just starting to reach for material. To wit, Queen Icon. Record companies were putting out essential collections, gold, whose library they were in, and the label that owned the rights to Queen's music at that time, they were all issuing Icon collections. This is 11 songs by Queen. You might not be able to find it anymore. The Queen Forever compilation was released in 2014. It features Freddie Mercury-led tracks that the band had forgotten about. It focuses, there's a duet with Michael Jackson that the band released, and some people thought that was kind of a big deal. Queen Forever is something that is at least okay. It's one of the better offerings to round out your collection if you're a completist, so I would give it that much. A Night at the Odeon was released in 2015. It was recorded in 1975, filmed by the BBC. Again, in my opinion, we're reaching. Queen on Air. This is a really awesome box set. It is a collection of live BBC sessions from the 1970s. There's a 100-minute version and a much more thorough 398-minute version. BBC studio sessions, live concerts. There are some interviews. This is really, if you're a fan, this is one I think you need. And it'll set you back a pretty penny. The Bohemian Rhapsody soundtrack in 2018 won the American Music Award for Favorite Soundtrack in 2019. It's a mix of studio recordings, live recordings, the audio from Live Aid. That's not really something you could get before. As an interesting way to mix up the band's highlight material, I would say this is one of the best, even though I'm generally not a big fan of soundtracks. In 2020, Greatest Hits in Japan was released. This was chosen by Queen's online Japanese fan club. This is for completists only, but it's hard to find. It was released in CD only in Japan. The Miracle Collector's Edition was released in 2022. Features a lost track called Face It Alone, which the band was able to reconfigure to digitally rescue, basically, the Miracle recording sessions. It's a very big deluxe edition. A lot of backing tracks, demos, an interview disc, a Blu-ray. In 2020s, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but deluxe editions are just super deluxe. The only reason I wouldn't rate this higher is because the Miracle itself was just not that great of an album. So I'm going to say good. And the Queen 1 box set in 2024. This was about as deluxe as it gets. It's the album remastered the way they had envisioned it being. It reorders the album the way they intended it to be in the right sequence. It inserts the track Mad the Swine. I mentioned that at the beginning of the video. This is something that the band is actually quite proud of. If you get on the YouTubes and search for like Brian May interviews about Queen 1, they're very proud of this. It's a very good box set. The only reason I don't more highly recommend it is I was just not that big of a fan of Queen 1 in the beginning. Whew! So thank you for watching. Share comments or thoughts, agreements, disagreements. And if you'd like to watch a shorter tier list video of mine, I don't know if it's up here or if it's up here. I never can remember which way to point.